Okay, today we're reacting to the new resub video, how Aussie Antics became OC's best Fortnite player. Let's check it out.
The OC region in Fortnite has historically been awful. No OCE player has ever won an international LAN or even won a game at an international LAN. Until a lowly fisherman and professional sub-thanker
Hey, resub, thanks for the sub, dude.
hit the big stage. The 2025 FNCS Pro-Am was hosted in the Reload game mode where 20 teams consisting of one pro and one content creator battled it out for their share of $500,000. The first step to winning was simple: play with Peterbot. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Now there are some accusations that potentially Aussie has been carried by Peterbot to this LAN win. He himself said it was all Peterbot. However, I'm here to say why that myth is both false and true. Aussie and Peterbot land at Slurpy Swamp. Now there are actually around 4 teams surrounding them in total. To their east they have Moxie and Cypher. To their north they have Booga and Typical Gamer. To the northwest they have Mr. Savage, Lachlan, Seti and Daya. And then to the south they have Mongrel and Ali A.
What the f is this?
Now, being uncontested at Slurpy Swamps means that they have access to an insane amount of loot, but Reload's respawn mechanic is really what their core strategy depends on, unsurprisingly. In the first game, as soon as Pete has a usable loadout, he has some materials, a mammoth pistol, a thunder pump, slurp juice, and then 2 different types of mobility. Pete sees a team fighting near him because he can hear the rift scoff, which means either teams are weak around him, or a player has just flown in with an AR and 100 HP, and this is a free elimination. So he immediately uses as much of that double mobility item that he has to get over to this fight as fast as possible. Here he hits 2 pistol bangs onto Savage, shockwaves behind them, pistols them again, and wipes him out. But funnily enough, Aussie was not useless here. He shockwaves up to help out as well, and ends up picking up an Elam onto Seti. So this is the first instance in this pro-am of a creator killing a pro. Let's go. Now he did have no shotgun and no materials, but I'm not taking this away from him. This was a good Elam. Then when Mr. Savage respawns out of the sky, Pete can just chase him down because again, this is a relatively free elimination. So after Pete manages to wipe out Savage for a second time, this is now...
I'm so sad Coyote didn't do amazing. I was hoping he would do great.
Now 3 Elams and 3 elimination points since it's 1 point per Elam. Now if you look at the point format for this game mode, you'll realize this is the same as getting a top 8, which is pretty much like the last 2 or 3 minutes of the game. So these 3 Elams were incredibly valuable, and all they needed to do was wait until a player respawned out of the sky and tried to farm them over again. A theme we will probably see a lot of throughout this video.
This is stupid!
Bro, we can find like 20 of these.
Now, of course, their drop spot of choice was Slurpy Swamp, and the strength of this cannot be understated. Mongrel and Ali A, the hardest W keying team in the lobby, end up pushing in to grab a bunch of mats and extra loot. But since Pete has come back from third partying that fight, they get into a bit of a scrap. In almost the most heroic moment of the entire tournament, Ali A is a single bullet away from knocking Peterbot, which I would have loved to have seen the crowd's reaction to if he did. And honestly, he probably only didn't elim him here because of Bloom. Pete had 20 HP, he had a great AR, and if you watch it in slow motion, I'll be honest, Ali A probably should have got this elim. But because Peterbot is so weak and he's been fighting the other teams, he has almost no materials. So Aussie does a great job of creating a bunch of space backwards, which allows Peterbot to heal. Now, the beauty of Slurpy is the fact that there's just so many heals here. There are 4 slurp trucks and 176 slurp barrels total. So including the large slurp containers, this is 2,380 HP that each of these players can heal from barrels, forgetting all the slurp water that's around and the fact that both players can use these together. So since Pete almost died to Ali A and Mongrel, he can then just use these to heal up and it's absolutely no problem. And these heals will become much more relevant in later games as well. Now, Aussie's main role in this duo is to not milk and to put Peterbot into positions where he can succeed the most. Peterbot is the greatest player probably of all time, let's be real, and teaming up with him, you have to play to his strengths. So notice here how it's really early into the game and they've just made a rotate into zone and he splits him mat early. He is essentially loot llamaing Peterbot at this point, acknowledging that if Aussie milks and ends up dying early with a ton of mats, well, that means less for Peterbot. So at all points throughout these 6 games, he pretty much just continually splits and mats over and over again, which allows Peterbot to get a bunch of solo clutches later on in the tournament. And his comms here are also very, very good. He's aware that he does not want to end up taking too much damage.
I'm just not going to peek. I just don't want to milk our meds. I've only got this,
I'm not going to peek because I don't want to milk our meds. So many different players in this scenario would just take damage back, and then yes, you have to waste a big pot, you have to waste some chug jug, and you're not really going to get much out of it. They've already got 3 elims early, so what do they need this for? He then gets an elim on a player flying out of the sky, and now he has 2 elims, and Pete has 2 elims as well. So yeah, he does ego check him a little bit.
Dude, 2-2, man? Come on, kill checked by me? Come on, man. You gotta be at least triple my kills.
Now, I will be honest, he does absolutely milk this first game. He sees a body down on low ground, he runs for it, he doesn't protect himself whatsoever. He then gets up to a safe lair, and all he needs to do is edit a couple cones down to get back into Pete's box, but he's lost. But he ends up going down. Pete then frags on low ground, gets completely capped mats from 2 bodies to the backside, and then unfortunately can't get out of a box. Now, if I ever say I am the Scottish Peterbot, this is what I'm referring to. So in this first game, they got no placement points because they didn't get into a top 10 despite playing out the entire endgame, but they got 6 elim points. Now, Aussie is what we like to call a glass cannon build. Now, the definition for that is high damage output, but low defense / survivability. And I think that's a perfect way to describe him. Shout out to my boy Realms, who ended up saying this in my chat, which I've just absolutely stolen, but it's perfect. Sure, Aussie did die early in this game, but he got 2 elims, and there was only 3 other creators out of the 20 in the entire lobby who actually out-fragged him, and there were 8 other creators who ended up dying before him. So in terms of his input, he was actually one of the highest input creators from this entire first match, despite the fact that they didn't actually get any placement points at all. But coming into game 2, they have a really interesting strategy that again revolves around Reload's strange respawning mechanics. So Aussie Antics lands at Slurpy Swamp, but Pete lands at Dirty Docks. You see, the previous game's winners was Zemi and Cooper.
Oh, this was so hype. This was so cool.
So Pete ended up landing on them.
I really thought we were going to see more of this.
Now, if he's successful, he's able to get an elim or 2 off of them and maybe scuff up their looting path. And because there's so many other teams there, you might get them stuck in a respawn.
I thought we were going to see so much more of this, like landing on other teams that were doing well. I think it only happened like once though, which is kind of sad.
Loop where they're dying out the sky over and over, and then potentially just ruins the rest of their game, meaning they're not going to get as many points. But on the flip side, if Pete dies, then he's just going to respawn at Slurpy Swamp with nobody around him because they are uncontested here, meaning then he can just do his usual looting path. So it's a pretty zero risk play. But unfortunately, Aussie Antics lands on the top chest and dies to Booga, which means rather than Pete respawning at the Slurpy Swamp, he respawns at Dirty Docks with a bunch of other teams, meaning he then gets stuck in a loop of continually respawning and dying out of the sky. Fortunately, he is able to glide back to Slurpy, and Pete comes with him as well, and then both of them are able to loot, because again, there's just so much shield and loot in this drop spot. Apparently, Aussie actually IGL'd this call to make Pete go and land on that team, which is the right play, just unfortunately he learned mid-tournament that landing on the top chest, probably not a good idea. And neither of them did this after this. But this game showed a lot of these strange quirks with actually how the LAN event was run. You see, these players don't use their regular normal accounts. They don't just sign in here on them. Instead, a new account is created for them, and all of the cosmetics and their name, etc. is transferred onto this temporary account used for the LAN. But when I say cosmetics, I really mean cosmetic, because whatever the player's account had on them at the time that they had currently equipped, a bug forced the players not to be able to change their skins at all. So for example, if you saw a loser fruit skin, it was either going to be Alex or loser fruit. If you saw a no skin, that was probably going to be Cypher PK or Nicky30, because their icon skins either didn't transfer over or they didn't want to wear them because they didn't want to get focused. And if you saw the Ali skin, unfortunately, that meant probably free elims. Now, he may have almost gotten the elim onto Peterbot in game number.
How much this really affected, because like, I know like you see it's Ali in the air and you shoot him, but like, when they're in the air like that, does it really matter who it is? It's not like it's not like he was getting farmed. I mean, he was getting farmed because of like his thing, but like, it's not 100% because of the skin. But the skin definitely was like, that was a bit
number one, but that was not going to be the trend going forward. Peterbot notices that it's him and Mongrel rotating to the south of him and shockwaves onto them. Now he full boxes Ali, and I'll be honest, this is probably one of the longest wall sniffs I have ever seen. Then, because Mongrel's a solo, Peterbot can just chase him over and over again, and he gets a really nice elim on him, getting completely capped mats. Now you may be asking, what was Aussie doing at this time? Well, this is where the anchor strategy comes in. In these early fights, Aussie is just reharvesting materials, getting a bunch of extra loot and whatnot, and if Peterbot dies when he's W-keying one of these teams, he's just going to safely respawn in Slurpy, where you can just instantly get stacked again. Now, it may seem like Aussie doing nothing, but getting a ton of mats, getting a ton of loot, not dying, and giving Peterbot a safe space to respawn to farm a bunch of early elims was a core part of their strategy. Now, if you're going to play with Peterbot, you have to be confident. You have to match his style of play, or else you're just not going to blend well. And Aussie has confidence, I can tell you that much. Cammy and Jacob rotate into Slurpy Swamp and box up next to them. And with 0 damage dealt by Aussie or Peterbot onto this duo, listen to the call.
Maybe we can shockwave in, bro. It's up to you.
Nah.
Okay.
Unreal, cinematic. That was one of my favorite moments for the entire tournament. Then they build across them, and Pete says
Aussie
we can
was
jump in.
awesome,
And with no hesitation, Aussie just follows him, jumps in, and actually picks up the elim onto Jacob. Now, this is actually quite important, because had Peterbot just jumped in, Cammy would have gone into a 1v1 with him because they had the wall between them. But because Aussie dropped down, grabbed the wall, this actually scared off Cammy, meaning that they didn't risk dying here at all. Now, come to the end game. He may have milked a second time, but he did drop Pete capped mats again, and this is definitely where the Aussie's just doing a viewing party on LAN accusations did start to come in. However, when he's dead, he just calms the really important things like materials left, and he marks every single zone. He's not annoying, he doesn't scream and shout, he doesn't do anything to distract Peterbot. He's basically the perfect dead player, if that makes sense. Then Pete as a solo is able to get up to a top 4, gets an elim, but unfortunately there's no siphon in reload, even in reload tournaments, so he immediately dies. Now after these first 2 games, they're up in 5th place out of 20 teams with 4 games remaining. Now, the replays for this event were entirely broken, so I wouldn't even be able to make this video if it wasn't for Assyrian, who basically recreated replays that I'd be able to record from. So big shout out to them. Not a sponsor, but without them, this video would be much worse. Go follow, links down below. Game 3, I'll be honest, there's not that much to talk about. They got a bunch of max zones, and they used all of their mobility early, and then Pete just had a grappler, so he couldn't actually help Aussie rotate whatsoever. So Aussie just split him his mats and just said, sayonara, good luck, solo. So you know what? He knew his place. He was loot lama in this. But unfortunately, Pete only was able to solo clutch up to a top 10, which again is only halfway through the lobby. So they ended up dropping from 5th place down to 7th. But the next game would not be so uneventful. This was probably the most entertaining game of the entire weekend. And it was all thanks to Ali A. Now at the start, Aussie makes a call that he should W key Cypher PK, who is struggling to the east.
Dude, I swear we can look at PK though, bro. PK goes that slurp.
That's where I'm about to go. That's where I'm about to go.
Unfortunately, he doesn't say to the east, and Peterbot doesn't actually know the teams that are landing around him. So he W keys to the north, and he comes across Booga and TG. Now, after hitting a couple shots for around 50 to 100 damage onto TG, he starts to W key him, and he gets full pieced by TG in a phenomenal moment.
Wait, I thought it was... Oh.
PK is to the east, bro. You got a full key east for PK if you want to get there too.
Okay.
But again, because it's reload, he then respawns inside of Slurpy, dies once out of the sky, then Aussie makes a good play to go inside of the main building where the roof is higher, which allows Pete to actually drop down safely, and then because of the slurp, he can just basically get instantly healed up again, and then they can just continue to play out the rest of the match. So Aussie's role here as the anchor to always allow Pete to W key comes in very clutch. Then again, later into this game, they spot Ali A. Now again, because it's just the Ali A skin, you know unfortunately he is the worst player in the lobby and is going to be very easy to elim. So after Pete gets an elim onto him, they build up onto a hill right next to him.
No. Okay, listen. We're going on this hill. We're farming it.
And Mongrel is sitting below the hill, basically unable to move. This means that Ali A repeatedly spawns out of the sky and dies over and over and over and over. I could keep going again. His reactions, quite funny, I will say.
What the f is this? This is stupid! Let me change my skin so people stop farming me, bro!
But all of a sudden, every stream from inside the venue went down. The main broadcast went down, the players' individual streams paused, all of the co-streamers went down, and basically the only person live inside was Bucky from his phone. Now, there were many theories on what was going on in the middle of this match. The main one being that the IP address for the building was leaked, and then Ali A DDoSed it to shut it down so that he could stop dying over and over again.
This is the game we needed, bro. This is the game we needed. Ali A, I'm so sorry wherever you are, man.
Unfortunately, it was just a regular power cut to the entire campus area, which basically just stopped the match. This meant that the 6 elims that Pete and Aussie had already gotten at this point were completely null and void. And remember, 6 elims is a massive swing in the overall leaderboard, given it's 10 points for a win. So if the game cancelled, it has to be restarted.
I like how
but the
elim-heavy the
real
tournament
game
was,
number 4 did have
like,
a bit of a similar
I think
trend
the
to what we
placement
just saw.
there should have been more placement.
Mongrel
like,
tried to do
like
the
top
same
15 maybe
split off
instead of top
spawn
10.
strategy
Top
that
10
Pete
was
and Aussie
like,
did in game number 2, this time trying
know,
to
it was
land
just
on
odd,
the
like-
Frenchies up to the north.
I feel like
Unfortunately, he
placement
got no elims
placement
and
didn't
died.
start
So
going
that
out
means
until,
when he
like, the game
respawned on
was already
Allier to the south, Pete immediately heard that. So at this point, Aussie made a great play to drop all of his materials and all of the good weapons he had to Pete so that he could go and W-key the team while he kept refarming. Pete then is able to re-elim Mongrel again and leaves Allier alive so he can try to farm Mongrel out of the sky. However, Mongrel flies into Slurpy where Aussie is, and Aussie again makes the big confidence play. He W-keys him, chases him into the bottom of a building, shockwaves in, and manages to elim Mongrel. So now he's got 2 pro elims to his name. Then after respawning, Pete, Mongrel classics Mongrel.
Pete with the fucking pulse rifle, dude, that was such I know this RNG, but like, I genuinely, that the pulse rifle could have been won in the tournament. Like, actually, that's insane RNG to get the pulse rifle, bro.
Which is a little bit insulting, I'll be honest. So this game, not only is Aussie doing a great job of allowing Peterbot to continually respawn in Slurpy and be safe, he's also just W-keying pros confidently and shockwaving in their box. So with a couple early elims, they decide to stay in Slurpy Swamp and get as stacked on their materials as they possibly can.
Huge,
now,
too.
throughout this tournament, Aussie's RNG hasn't
been
really that great when it comes to weapons. He also does grey and green, and he was complaining a lot about it through all of the matches, until this.
Oh, I got a grey. Oh no, it's not even a frigate. Dude.
I got the pulse rifle.
Wait, the pulse rifle?
Yeah.
Yo, okay.
We win.
Now, the overclocked pulse rifle is the highest damage per second of any assault rifle, being 237.5 damage per second.
Like,
giving
it's actually
Pete is kind of unfair. He also pulled a really good Slurpy zone this game, which allowed Pete to go up on top of the building and just destroy everyone and rotate. At this time, Aussie was sitting down below, refarming as many materials as possible to keep them as stacked as they could. Now, Aussie's main job in this is to stay alive. He has milked 3 endgames so far, 2.5 we'll say, because the previous one wasn't really his fault, they just didn't have any mobility, and all of the previous 3 winners of the games had both the pro player and the content creator alive to the end. Essentially, if you manage to keep both players alive right into the end of the game, your chances of winning skyrocket.
I know people know, it should be obvious, but if you want to win tournaments, and you need to beat an endgame with both people alive. Like,
by playing height the entire game, they managed this incredibly well. The final 4 players in this match were Peterbot, Cold, Cooper, and Aussie Antics. And with some beautiful shots from the pulse rifle, Peterbot was able to wipe out Cooper and win the game. So yes, this means that OCE finally has a victory royale at an international land.
First, like,
it's not
land
Muzz,
game win and first.
it's not Alex. It is Aussie Antics. Let's go. With this win, they're now up into second, only being 3 points behind Cooper and Zemi in first. Now, I will be honest, he glass cannons the last 2 games, dies early, and basically only played 1 endgame out of 6. But Peterbot was able to clutch up a top 5 finish in both of these last 2 games, enough just to let them win over Cooper and Zemi. But it wasn't their endgames and placement that won them the tournament. Remember, this format was still really reliant on elims. And out of the teams who placed in the top 5, they actually had the lowest placement points, being only 30. But it's the elims where they made up the difference. They had 41 elims total, where the next highest team was Somerset and Thomas HD in 7th, where they got 27. Now, Aussie's role in these elims was incredibly important. Outside of game 2, where he died out of the sky and then got farmed a little on respawn, he did not die and respawn once, whilst Peterbot was out farming kills on players around them. Sure, Peterbot did the heavy lifting, but Aussie was reliable, confident, and definitely downplayed his own part because he died in every single endgame, but he was incredibly important in winning this tournament, and of course, being the first LAN winner from OCE, and therefore OCE's best player. Now, if you want to see how I became Scotland's best Fortnite player for 6 days, you can click on this video right here.
Amazing video from Resub as always. Shout out to Resub. This guy makes some of the best Fortnite competitive content, if not the best Fortnite competitive content. I mean, he's awesome. All right, see you guys. If you like this, like and subscribe. Cool. Go check Resub out for sure.